We have been watching day one of the fatal rejection murder trial for defendant Waymore Gerhardt. The now 22-year-old is facing first-degree murder after prosecutors say he murdered 14-year-old Demiah Appling, a girl who allegedly refused his advances. Let's go back in now for the rest of the state's opening statement.
And then Max, you'll see a couple hours later, probably when he wakes up, man, we need to talk. What is this mess in my car? And tell you what the defendant says. It says, I shot a squirrel. And that's what that blood is in the back seat. Shot a squirrel. And he says, well, who else did you have in here? What are you talking about? Well, I found some little girl shorts and a phone. Oh, that's Keith and some girl stuff. I took them to Brenda's, I swear, but I didn't go anywhere else because I'm not a taxi. I don't disrespect you and anything like that. And hey, when you get home, I'll clean it all out. I'll burn all the junk in there. I'm sorry. Oh, you don't just leave the phone for me. I don't want anybody else mad at me. I'll take care of it. Okay. That's basically what you're gonna hear from Max. Now you'll hear from Wayne's boss at the time, because Wayne's supposed to go work. He's supposed to be there at 10. And, it'll come up in his interviews whether he went or whether he didn't. He did, period, point blank. He did. You're going to see the phone calls from his boss, trying to see you coming to work. You're going to see the text messages. So you coming in. It's going to be radio silent on Waymore here's in until about 3 in the morning. Back when he settled back at the house with Dylan after he shot the little girl in the back of the head and buried her in a tiny hole. Then he'll text back, oh, I'm sorry. I just overslept and anything, and I'm sorry. Okay. So then we talked to the defendant. And what does Wayne have to say about it? Well, the first time they talked to Wayne, it's, no, I haven't seen her, can't stand her, this, that, and the other. Okay. Now we keep working the case, you get a little more information. Okay, now we've seen some communications. We're starting to see some data. It's starting to come in slowly but surely, but we're knowing a little more. And detectives, they go back and talk to him again. Okay, yes, she did come over here. We had sex, and then she left with her boyfriend. Okay, we had sex with her. Then it turns into, she gave me a hand job for $60, and then she walked off, and that's the last I'd ever seen to her. Yes, I went to work. No, I didn't go to work. I never left this area that night. I didn't go to work because I was sick. And then he starts talking about the squirrel and how he shot a squirrel and it had been in the back seat of the vehicle and it's come back to life and it made such a mess in the vehicle. And that's what that is. That's what all that's about. Just a little squirrel. See, process vehicle, of course. We go through there, and you're going to see the pictures where the FDLE comes and they use certain chemicals to illuminate that react with blood and other chemicals. I'm just giving defense benefit of the doubt. It does react with other things to see, and they swab and they test. And you're going to hear from the persons who collected it, you're going to hear from the persons tested that it does test positive for blood, and it is not a squirrel. It is Demiah Appling, her blood in that back seat. You will be able to see it smear between the two seats in the back where you pull one of them up on that trail blood. He cleaned it pretty good, but he didn't get it between the seats. And then there's some on the door frame too. We'll see her blood. I told you we get data. You don't hear from a lot of witnesses, and every one of them said something a little different than they said another time. I'm not Gonna sugarcoat it with you. But the data doesn't lie. The messages, when they're sent, where they're sent from, the mapping, those cell phones, everybody got to leave outside because they can do so much and they can communicate so much, even when you don't want them. Okay? Even when you don't think they are. And you can see where somebody's going and where they've been. And you can look at their messages. And sure, they've deleted some of them. And Keith sure did. But you can still see where they went. And ladies and gentlemen, by the time this is done, when you've heard all the witnesses, when you've seen all the evidence, when you've brought your own God-given common sense to bear, and you contemplate that all, the state is confident. There is no question as to. There is no question as to how. The only question is to how long he thought about it before he wrapped that bolt action 22 and put it up to the back of that little girl's head. He is guilty as charged. Thank you.
I'm sold. No, we gotta wait for the defense. Let's bring in New York, trial attorney Mackenzie Joy Brennan. The blood got me. Her blood in between the seats after the squirrel story. Sorry. And the disgusting motive for this. If I'm a juror right now, before the defense, I'm thinking, overall thoughts here, and what do you expect from the defense?
It'll be interesting. I'm glad that they had a somewhat masculine male prosecutor do this, because this type of crime is so gendered. It's the type of thing that just makes my blood boil. 14 and 19 years old. I'm glad he referred to her aptly as a little girl. And you can hear that he's trying to preempt some character smears that are going to come out inevitably from the defense. You know, the fact that he had to mention that she was going down a bad path, but is a child. And, you know, that's not her fault. That is not an invitation to be exploited. And when you see this type of gendered entitlement, and frankly, pedophilia, this like weird pedophilic culture, it's predictable then that somebody in the defendant's alleged position would perceive her as being disposable. So I'm with you.
I think
we'll see what happens.
The cryptic messages from the state saying we acknowledge we're getting a lot of different stories from a lot of different people. This seems like a defense of my guy's not great, but he didn't do this. He runs with a circle of horrible people.
Sure. Yeah. That'll be interesting to watch come out. I wonder if this younger relative, the 15-year-old, will get placed in some culpable situation, although he, of course, was more age appropriate for this girl and didn't have the blood in the car. But I think you're right. With the vehicle being potentially shared between folks, on the other hand, it does sound like this defendant has his own record already. Like, he refers to himself by a different name. It sounds like diagnosed himself as bipolar. We'll wait and see if that comes out further in the defense's opening, I guess. But he does not sound ill-suited to this type of crime, if you will.
Yeah, we'll see. We don't want to jump to conclusions after just one side. Let's get a commercial break and jump in and watch the defense. See what the defense is for Waymore Gerhardt. Is it going to be a pointing the finger at somebody else? What will the defense be? We'll find out next. Has to say to this jury.
This world failed Demiah Appling. That failure started not on a night in mid-October, but long before that. Some of the things Mr. Brett talked about in his opening statement, that child who is at the point where she's running the streets, missing for days at a time, reports of drug use. Then finally, we come to some of the things that happened that Mr. Gerhardt's told you about. This is a difficult situation because we're going to ask you to make one of the most difficult decisions that a jury can make. There's something terrible that happened in the search for an explanation. But the issue is not so much that the world failed Demiah before she was killed. There were numerous people that failed Demiah leading up to her being killed and after she was killed as well. There were failures in the investigation, failures by people who were involved in this case to tell the truth. A lot of it. That's your job, is to figure out who's telling the truth, who's not telling the truth, what parts of what they say is the truth, and what parts are not. You're going to hear from a number of individuals over the next couple of days who are full of a pack of half-truths, self-interest, and strategic amnesia. I want you to think about the idea of strategic amnesia. I can remember things that make me look good and that make Mr. Gerhardt look bad, but I can't remember other things that might make me look bad. That is going to be a theme in the testimony that you hear from Keith Anderson, who can't quite decide whether or not he was putting Demiah in danger. He can't decide that. Even though he's been asked to do all these text messages, according to Mr. Gerhardt, according to the text evidence, he's been asked to do these things, but he can't decide. He's kind of back and forth on that issue. That's a failure right there. You're going to hear about numerous portions of the investigation where decisions was made during the investigation that Mr. Gerhardt was their prime suspect. But that wasn't always consistent with the evidence. And one of the things you're going to hear about, I feel confident that at some point during this trial, you're going to have the chance to see a .22 long rifle. I feel confident the state will put that in. Okay? And you're going to hear about some of the forensic testing that was done on that .22 long rifle. You're going to hear that there is DNA on that long rifle that they still don't know. They still don't know. Today, they don't know whose DNA that is. Today. But at some point, we just decided that we're ready. Right? It took too long to ready. You're going to hear the state's theory of the case is that Mr. Gerhardt himself, with no one else involved, abducted someone in a passenger vehicle and somehow managed to get them by himself behind her and shoot her in the back of the head with a rifle that's this long. Now, I want you to work through the mechanics of that, of how that would work. How you would threaten someone in a car, that's what you've got, and they're in the car with you. How you would get a person in a vulnerable position when that's your only weapon, how that would work. Now, I suggest to you that that does not add up, that there are individuals involved in this case who have never been named. Never been named. And it was a failure of the investigation that led you to be here today. This trial is a failure of the system. Because instead of getting to the bottom of this, we have someone who was involved, but who was not the killer. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that Mr. Gerhardt didn't do anything wrong, because that is not true. Okay, that is absolutely not true. Clearly, the forensic evidence shows that he was very much involved. Shows that he was out and about that night. I think that the forensic evidence that you're going to see from some of the witnesses show that he did lie to the police and he did go out. He did do things. He probably buried her exactly where they say he did. Cleaned up the backs of Max Lyon's vehicle. but he did not shoot her. And the physical evidence is consistent with that. The mechanics of how this occurred are consistent with that. And I want you to listen carefully. The state's going to tell you that they don't have to prove motive, and that is true. They do not have to prove a motive. But people do things not just randomly. They do things for a reason. And there is no reason here. There is absolutely no reason. None will be provided by the testimony of the witnesses. None was provided by the state in their opening statement. There was no reason.
Welcome to all our new followers from our sister channel at Truth Talks Live. You're watching at Southern Sin, your home for true crime. Hop over and hit that subscribe button. You're watching at Southern Sin, your new home for true crime. Smash that like button now. We'll be right back. True crime just got darker. Catch the full episode on the link above. Subscribe to at Southern Sin today and hit the notification bell for more live original episodes Wednesdays at 8 p.m.